I got exposed by the French Twitter Valorant community for being a hater of Karmine Corp. If you translate the tweet here, it says, yo, he hates us so much, the bald goatee. By the way, again, inspired insults as usual from the non-English speaking Twitter crowd, just like the Japan tweets. I hope what he says is wrong, lol. And I think, actually, this part is really important because I got swamped with tweets after this from Karmine Corp fans who I'm pretty convinced haven't watched very much Valorant because the way in which they were super enthusiastic after beating FPX, whilst their team looked kind of shit, indicates to me that they only really looked at the result and didn't really, I mean, they're from like football Twitter or fucking League of Legends or I don't know, some other part of the Twitter world. But I think a lot of the reason that I got so much hate for this is because I'm speaking their internal fears about this team. I'm convinced there's a psychological component. These fans know that there's a chance that their team is just going to go down the shitter and they're attacking anybody who says it openly. I'm not saying I'm speaking the truth. I'm saying I'm speaking their darkest fears. All right, so let's listen to what I actually said.
FPX versus Karmine Corp. Karmine Corp.
FPX. This Karmine Corp team,
I can't do this
Karmine
again.
Corp team is fucking trolling.
Yes,
this Karmine Corp team
actually
makes
trolling.
no sense. This Karmine Corp team has left out good francophone players and just thought, fuck it, Scream can IGL another team into the ground whilst putting up absurdly good fucking stats and making everyone around him mauled out of control because you feel like he should be on a great team. He is a great player, and yet the team is just going downhill. The streets are talking, saying that they're playing dog shit comps. I didn't come up with that. Bala whispered it in my ear. I don't know whether it's true, but I'm ready. I'm fucking dead set ready to mold at this team. I think Scream and Nevera are going to be good. I don't trust the rest of this roster. I don't think it's been put together very well. I think it's been put together for clout. FPX are rolling in China. They're going to come into Brazil and fucking poo.
All right, so apart from the egregious FPX belief, which I corrected after watching any more VODs of FPX. If you guys remember that VOD review stream where I was watching FPX, I was just immediately, all of my confidence in that team disappeared. And I ended up actually predicting Karmine Corp instead of FPX. Which, again, none of the French fans know because they only watched that tweet, but they only watched this clip, but that's fine, that's fine. But the reason that I ended up predicting Karmine Corp was not because I thought they weren't trolling. They were trolling, and in fact, they trolled harder than I thought that they were going to in the first place. But I want to show you what it did to my what this tweet, 700k views. Wow, that's a lot. That's more than like this tweet from Wired that got retweeted the same amount of time. Oh look, I posted a fucking tweet the day later. Wow, 95 replies. What are this on a fucking video about Som being as good as Marved? Oh, it's Karmine Corp fans. They're everywhere. They're fucking everywhere, posting all sorts of shit. So there's like the occasional tweet that's about the video that I posted, and everything else is the Karmine Corp fans saying, why haven't you tweeted about how good we are? We beat FPX, you dumb bald egg. Again, here, I mean, unbelievable. Now that you've seen the performance of Karmine Corp, what do you think of our team without devaluing us because we are French? By the way, a quarter of my closest family are French. I'm apparently devaluing them because they are French. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Okay, so again, like, my notifications, my mentions, I don't know what these people are saying, but I assume that's taking a piss out of me dressed as a hot dog. A lot of people quote retweeting it. Other people, I don't know, some other shit. That's probably supposed to be me. I don't know. A lot more French tweets. These are my mentions, by the way. These are my mentions on February 13th and 14th. It's all French. It's all French all the way down. It's all French all the way down. Analyze better. Get a better job. This cast is so fucking stupid. French... I mean, Karmine Corp went crazy, man. They went crazy. I don't know where this stops. I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't, because I just stopped using Twitter at lock-in. By the way, a lot of people saying, how did you not predict us? Your predictions are so bad. Bad analyst. By the way, came out of the fucking tournament with joint best predictions for the event out of all of the talent. But again, that's not actually an analyst's job at all. So, okay, still going with the French tweets, by the way. Still going with the French tweets. This is still February 14th. This is only 2 days. It's crazy. Yeah, exactly. People, I mean, good man in the chat, people think it's just Brazilians that act like this. Turns out literally everyone is that stupid. The Karmine Corp, I think, have attracted some people from like ultra soccer fans and this kind of shit. Wait a second. I think we finally got out of it. February 16th. We finally got out of it after 3 tweets in a row with just question marks, and people finally started responding to the Karmine Corp people saying Karmine Corp aren't good, lol. Oh, by the way, my DMs also just fucking blown up. Fida pute, analyze better, please. It's just the start. I mean, oh, it's all French. It's all French. It's unbelievable. Okay, so I want to go back kind of to the original thing. And, yeah, that's Valentine's Day, by the way. All right. So I want to go back to the original thing. What did I actually say? So my points were, I thought FPX was going to win because Karmine Corp were trolling. The way that they built their roster didn't make sense. Scream wasn't going to be a good IGL, and we were going to mold because he was going to have good stats and fail to run a team properly, basically, right? They were rumored to be playing terrible comps. I am going to go through each of the things that I said and reinforce them with statements. So, topic bar, please. And this one, Karmine Corp are trolling. So let's... We've already, I feel, addressed the FPX will win scenario with I was dumb and hadn't watched enough FPX. I hold my hands up. Analyze better? I absolutely should. I should have watched more games of FPX, and I did a couple of days afterwards, and I changed my opinion to that Karmine Corp were going to win. So, yes, I accept that. Fair criticism, French fans. Absolutely fair. I didn't do my job properly before going on Plat Chat, and I should have known that Karmine Corp were better than FPX because FPX were also kind of looking like dog. So I'm going to return back to Karmine Corp trolling because I have just so many examples of Karmine Corp trolling. But I want to start with roster makes no sense. So let's plug in roster makes no sense, and we'll kind of start from there, shall we? So the big play that they've missed, obviously, right, is Enzo on this team. And I feel like any Francophone roster, any team that's supposed to be a French-speaking super team playing in EMEA is trolling if you haven't got Enzo IGLing your team, and if you've instead just given the reins to Scream. It's a bad way to begin your roster overall. So, aside from Enzo not being on the team overall, which, if you're asking, I would have had it instead of Nuzera, they have Scream playing a support role, something that he's actually never been very good at. He's always been best. Even when he plays stuff like Sage, for example, which people will cite as his good supportive roles, he's normally best when he's put in a position to frag, which you can with Sage. Nivera is on a role where he's not empowered to op. XMS is playing new agents, and he's played smokes in the past, so it would make sense to swap XMS's and Nivera's roles around. Shin is comfortable, and he was the only player that ended up actually playing well at the tournament, in my opinion, in a holistic sense, because there were parts of other people that played well. Nuzera is comfortable as well, but again, I don't think he's the quality of player that I would have in a team like this. I would swap him for Enzo every day of the week. So, again, I really feel like the roster makes no sense in the way that it's been constructed is very valid criticism. They haven't got an IGL with a good record or good experience like Enzo has, and their roles that they've chosen don't make sense either. So let's go into Scream IGL, and well, for this one, I just want to take a look at Scream's IGL history because I don't think it's as bad as people will assume it is. But okay, so Liquid, this team that Scream was IGLing throughout, a fair amount of 2022. He inherited a team that had been up and down. No one's saying that he burnt Liquid into the ground or anything, not by any means. But they were constantly passing the IGL role around between the team, and frankly, from the outside, it didn't really feel like any of the players worked as the IGL. There was a moment where it looked like Yampy might be able to IGL fairly well towards the end of 2021, I think that was, when they were playing the double op defenses and they got top 4 at champs. It looked like they were going in a decent direction, but they never had confidence to stick with a player for long enough, and, you know, that's partly the way that they had built that previous roster too. But so the team fell off a cliff at the beginning, not off a cliff actually, but fell off a little bit at the beginning of 2022. And they squeaked into Reykjavik, which is around here, right? They finished 4th, and they got into Reykjavik because FPX weren't able to make it to the event. They beat some okay teams at Reykjavik. They lost to some good teams, including Zeta, who were actually playing pretty well by the time they played against Liquid, and that started Zeta's run. But I don't think they would qualify as gatekeepers. I don't even think that they would really qualify as dark horses with the power of hindsight, because they would just occasionally have a good read on the meta and it would click and it would work well for them. I think they were more lost, more so than anything. They were lost and they didn't have a good answer. And I don't think that Scream made it necessarily worse. He just didn't fix the problem at all. However, one of the things that was very obvious when you looked at Scream's IGLing was that they played weird compositions around Scream. Liquid had always played weird comps in the past, but they played weird shit. This is probably the least weird of the weird comps, this like Phoenix comp that they ran on Ascent, which put Scream as the center point. And they had tried it in the past, and apparently Scream didn't like it then, but then they brought it back out another time, and then he looked more comfortable on it, something. They also, I guess that's slightly an untraditional comp on Icebox, but I actually think that it's a pretty decent one. They played some weird shit on Breeze too. Still no idea how they ended up winning these games, but I think it's mostly because they actually had a pretty good idea as a team of how to play Breeze. They'd always been good on Breeze. It was them and Mech that were like the top Breeze teams, even back when they were playing really good comps who were beating Mech, who were like one of the best teams in the world on this map at that period of time. But then they swapped to playing this Phoenix comp, which, if you remember these games, were fucking madness, honestly. Absolute madness to behold. And then their Pearl comp, which they pulled out in Champs as well, that again had Scream on Phoenix. So it wasn't just weird, it was a lot of weirdness that centered around Scream with unusual picks and stuff that was going to work for him specifically, right? So I also, there was another point that I made. And this is where I made my least accurate prediction, I think. Scream stats good is what I said. Wow, this is going to be another... This is what I said in that video that the French fans are molding about. It's going to be another team where Scream looks like one of the best players in the world. Imagine being mad at one of the analysts calling your player the best player in the world, but okay, this is the fucking world that we live in. Okay, you're not getting any audio for these donations because you're derailing me from the rant. But thank you for the sub, Kraken. So the Scream, so Scream was centering the team at the time fairly heavily around himself, and probably with the additional guidance of Sliggy at the time too. And his stats were really good. I mean, look, this is his Reykjavik stats where he's playing Jet, he's playing a bit of KO, a bit of Sage. The third best stats in terms of VLR rating, and I don't want to dig too deep into all of this historic stuff, so I'm just going to use the surface level rating at the moment to give you a rough idea. So like third best, here he is an EMEA back, playing online again, and he's still decently high up along there with all of the best players in the region. What is that, the top quarter of players, maybe even better than that, the top fifth or something. So then you go into the EMEA LCQ, again Scream's up there in the top 10. Then you look at champions, and you don't have to go too far down the list to find Scream again playing the Rays, playing the Phoenix, putting up good results individually. And then you look at Lock-In, the team that's built for Scream. The team that I thought he'd be confident still. I thought I was confident that he would still put up a good individual performance. You got Nevera there for Karmine Corp. And then, oh my word, we're having to scroll quite far here, aren't we? Oh, bloody Nora. All right, less than a 1 rating. There he is. 0.93. Kind of, oh yeah, Shin obviously as well. Yeah, sorry. Shin also, where is he? He's up somewhere towards the top 2. Shin played a really good tournament. Scream all the way down here. So, okay, maybe, you know, falling for the classic IGL problem of, you know, now really having to put the stress on, but, you know, put the stress on. Falling for the classic IGL problem where you don't have the bandwidth to play really well and call really well. But all of these events he was IGLing too. He was IGLing at Reykjavik from what I can remember. And even though Liquid passed the IGL round like a hot potato, I think he was still IGLing for these events too in 2022. So why the enormous drop off here? And I think part of it is because the agents that he ended up playing he's not good at them. Scream has said before in interviews that he thinks his best agents and the agents that he most enjoys playing are Sky and KO. But I can tell you, he is not, from an objective point of view, as good on those roles. Even if you want to talk about him being more supportive or whatever, he's just not as good on them as he is on the duelists. He's not generating the same level of value. So, actually, this is more about the compositions that they played. So we'll tuck that around somewhere else, to be honest. But, yeah, the comps that he played had him playing much more supportive stuff. So let's look at some examples, I think, of what he was doing from his position. So this is Scream's individual performance that dropped off massively at lock-in, and also is partly because he's playing agents that he's just not that great at, in my opinion. So look at him here. So let's pull out the thing. So Scream is this Sky player. He's positioned around here. When the barriers drop, he's going to send a flash down that flashes behind rubble, and the idea is that a lot of the time that's going to be comboed with a recon dart. Not this time though, because Nuzera's in a different position. So you know, he flashes, they flash recon. He's going to get some information off the back of that too. But look at how he uses his utility here. So if the flash goes through, he knows that there's people there. He flashes again instantly without any possibility of, you know, getting... I don't know what he's aiming for there, frankly, right? Like, he's flashing behind his own smoke. Maybe he just thinks that he's... Like, let's think about it this way. If his flash connects with somebody, has he learned anything? No, because he just flashed right before that. If his flash doesn't connect with anybody, as it doesn't in this instance, has he learned anything? No, because they could be right behind the Viper wall anyway and still scaling, or they could have left. Either way, it doesn't tell you a thing. You already know that they're, for the first 10 seconds, looking to gather some information in this area. And then he fucking splurges out his dog as well. So he's actually just all utility used in the first 11 seconds to see. Yep, there's people on A right where you know people can be, because they're able to teleport over here and able to get up behind the Viper wall as well. And now you've lost all of your utility at the beginning of the round. I don't have any problems with the initial flash. I think if he waits a little longer in the round and doesn't hear anything, the dog will gather actually decent information and tell people to stay over at A. But he's using them within the first 10 seconds. And then watch how he actually plays the round. It's an anti-eco, and look at the position that he plays. So Nevera gets the opening kill. They put their own Viper wall up, and Scream is just out in the middle of the open as the Viper wall drops. What is that? What is that? What am I witnessing here? What am I witnessing from Scream? I mean, in what world is that an intelligent way to be playing Sky on this map? So he's out in the middle of nowhere in an untradeable position, opens himself up to multiple angles against an eco. It's just not sensible gameplay whatsoever. So let's take a look at another example here where it's FEX playing against Karmine Corp, this time on Haven. We'll take a look at his KO. So Scream, using his 0 point, finds out that there's well, it's not necessarily the information here, but he suppresses the Omen and he suppresses the Sky. That means there are no flashes coming out from FPX. No paranoia to stop your retake. No flashes to stop your retake, right? So this is great information. Scream, IGL, okay, let's go for the retake, boys. We can't be really stopped here, to be honest. I mean, the paranoia actually got used right as the knife happened, but he's still... Like, whether or not he stops it or forces it out, it's not going to actually hinder the retake. So here, they get set up for the retake. Nuzera sets up. Scream goes for the underhand flash. Badao flashes himself an XMS and ruins the retake completely. And It looks unpracticed. He can't get in position because of the fault line, even though that this is presumably a preset retake, because breaches will quite frequently try and retake from this position. He doesn't look practiced with how he's using his utility, and Pansy even says, nice counter utility, because who the fuck as a caster expects that to be a team flash? Moving on. So, let's take a look at actually how Scream's pathing around. Again, to showcase that this isn't just him having lower stats because he's playing support. He's actually playing support poorly. So, moving up here into a long, Scream tucks himself behind this smoke. The smoke is designed for them to take a long control. Once you have a long control, you are then supposed to hold a long control. Scream tucks himself behind the box here instead of holding any kind of angle, and this means that he's not controlling the space whatsoever that his team has created for him. Ba-boom! There goes New Zera. Scream, though, does manage to swing, and he does collect Eucor. Okay, very nice. So, you've got yourself a 1-for-1 trade. That's perfectly fine. So now you just want to scale into the site, right? So, they throw a haunt. Nobody close detected by the haunt, but there could still be somebody over at the default box. And in fact, there is. Berlin, the IGL, has scaled in very quickly, doing a flood retake kind of thing, although not with his whole team, but flooding into the site to try and help reinforce this position, and tucks himself behind default box right as the haunt is out of his line of sight. Scream then uses his 0 point to check default, which is the only real place where other people could be, and doesn't wait for it to proc at all, runs in with his knife out, and picks up the operator on the floor to give Berlin the easiest kill of his life. Why do they want another operator when Nevera already has one on the attack side anyway? I don't know, but they did it. They did it. Don't know, can't tell you. Runs in with his knife out, dies, picks up the operator, can't pull out his gun, dies. Okay, moving on. Next example. Thank you. Actually, no. You know what? Let's stay on this example a little bit longer, because not only does Scream run in on his own here, but then Shin decides to face on his own too, just wandering in one by one like fucking lemmings into the site. XMS, for some reason, is slow walking up A long. Guys, while we're watching Shin here just decide to randomly face and take a duel as a 1v1, let's also pay attention to the minimap and watch XMS slow walking. What, to give away that there's nobody A long? Guys, you just came from there. What are you trying to give away? What info you were trying to obscure? I love. Yeah, sorry, I'm finished with the cauliflower. Yeah, thank you.
Want me to save it for tomorrow?
No, it's all right. Actually, yes. Yeah, go on then. Yes, please. Yeah.
Anyway, so.
Thank you. Thanks.
Do you need alcohol?
I don't need alcohol just yet, but I will do in a bit.
Oh, do you need coke?
No, I don't need coke either, because I'm already coked up on these fucking plays. Right, let's get back into it. So, like I said, watch what Shin is doing here, right? But also pay attention to the minimap and look here at how XMS just decides to slow walk up as Shin decides to just slow walk in and challenge. While Shin is still getting shot at, XMS is still slow walking, so he can't even hold this side of default so that Shin can focus on one angle. Shin has to look at both angles because XMS isn't on the fucking angle at all. He only now just decides to wide peek, and Berlin gets a very... Oh no, this wasn't the round where Berlin got a very lucky one. But it is slop. It is absolute slop from them. Slop. And Nevera's fucking AWPing this entire time as well, while Scream was trying to pick up a double AWP attack setup. Trolling! They are trolling! But anyway, let's move on. So, having finished with my Scream examples and starting to go on to molding about their teamwork in general, I think now would be a good time to transition the topic, because part of Scream running this roster basically and finding, you know, coaching staff and stuff like that that'll buy into his vision, part of that problem is that they are playing troll compositions. So playing troll comps, that's going to be our next topic. So, let's look at Haven to begin with. I've just showed you one example, but it's a troll comp. It's a triple initiator composition, and they didn't play terrible comps everywhere. I've got to be fair. They did not play terrible comps everywhere. But this Haven composition is a prime example of just goop. Just goop. They have 3 initiators, and they have a player that loves to attack up. What this means is they have nobody that's able to scale. They don't have anybody that's in a position to actually take the space that they create. compositions like this, triple initiator comps, are very difficult to coordinate on the attack side. DRX have tried to make them work a few times, running them on Haven, running them on Ascent, and even with their very set play, drilled, utility-heavy style, where they have lineups and then they all scale together off the back of the lineups, even they have really struggled at times to make comps like that work on the attack side. I think EG actually had a really good idea of how to make that kind of stuff work with their Ascent triple initiator comp that they copied from DRX but changed up like how it actually flowed with the util. But this was an example of this new team not having a clue how to execute Scream's theoretical perfect way that Valorant should be played. And part of the reason why comps like this are bad is because while they could be perfect in theory, and people like Angel have talked about it in the past, and Scream seems to buy into this idea too, that a theoretical comp that has a shit ton of util is the best comp that you could possibly run. The problem is, what's actually the best, practically speaking, are the ones that you can execute on. If you have a 10 out of 10 comp, but you can only execute it at 20% of its efficiency, then you're better off playing a 3 out of 10 comp at 100% efficiency. So, frankly, there's just spaghetti everywhere when you're watching this map in particular, but also we'll bring up examples from a bunch of others too. So let's talk about the next example that we've got, which is them being unable to effectively take this A-long position away. So let's see. So they're not using utility to clear this kind of area. You know, normally you'd go for some kind of smoked across. It's 116 though, so maybe there'd be some kind of, drone, dog, something like that to try and clear the A lobby positions as you return back to B at this point, because we're kind of getting into mid-round rather than the early round here. So if you haven't got A-long control off the beginning, usually teams will return to this area with a Sova drone or a dog or something like this. So instead, they just jiggle peek it with a triple initiator comp. So, okay, that's fine. And then their site exec we'll take a look at. So their site exec is going to be the Omen ult comes through. They've got a Prowler. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here because I just have so many examples that I'm fucking overwhelmed by that as well. And you're very right, chat. If you have a 10 out of 10 streamer, but he only streams 10% of the time, you're better off getting a 3 out of 10 streamer who streams 100% of the time. I agree. And that, I understand, is why you all watch the other Valorant analysis, but that's okay. The 10 out of 10 streamer's back, and you're all tuning back in. So who's really won here? It's not Karmine Corp, I can tell you that. They have not won. So their site exec is going to be a null command, a Prowler. They have a fault line and a flash that come through here as well from Nuzera. So there's the fault line. So, sorry, here's the site exec. So Prowler, fault line, flash. Okay, so here you see the exec. Now, if this was a comp where, Scream was playing Duelist, he was playing, let's say, Jet, for example. The Jet would already have, be holding this line as the Prowler comes around. Then the fault line comes through. Flash is popped. Jet dashes into smoke and swings as the players are blinded backside, as a haunt comes up, something like that, right? But because they're running no Duelist, look at how slow they are to be able to capitalize on the utility that they're throwing in the first place. It just doesn't make any sense. Scream also, by the way, uses 0 pieces of utility apart from his ultimate in this exec. Why not just play Duelist? If you're not going to use any utility anyway, and you're slow to scale, look, they can't get up off the flash. They get the kill on the player that's over at Graffiti, sure, but they can't actually make use of the fault line and flash that were used to clear this back default area. They're too slow. They're too slow because they're not in position quickly enough, because they're all throwing utility, apart from Scream, who also isn't playing Duelist, and so can't scale properly off the back of it. So it doesn't make any sense. So Scream now swings in without the benefit of any utility. Now this is just a dry swing, where his positioning is expected. So he dies. He's not favored taking that fight at all, even if it wasn't a double swing from Berlin and Ayoung. Then Nivera, because he's attack AWPing, and oh my god, we're going to talk about this later as well, because Nivera's AWPing is fantastic, but the way that it's implemented into their team comps is dog shit. So now Nivera is the second player, the trader, with the operator, whose job is to try and trade with an op as Scream pushes in. What the fuck am I watching? They are trolling. They are trolling. They are trolling. This is just awful gameplay. And the other part of this too is, these comps that they're running are so far away from the norm of what people practice when they play ranked that these players don't understand how to play their roles. It was incredibly obvious watching even people like Nuzera here, who is on his role, right? He plays Breach. I think his most played agent is Breach. It might be, yeah, I think it is Breach, actually. So he played a fuck ton of Breach in this tournament, and he should be comfortable, right? But the comp is so unusual that all of your hours of ranked, where your job as a pro player is to take things from being conscious decision-making into unconscious decision-making so that you're fluid and instinctive, all of that goes out the fucking window and you have to think about every decision you're making again. Because you're playing a comp that your players are not comfortable with, that they don't understand how it flows and how it works, because you're playing this style of Valorant that is foreign to them. So let's take a look at why and how this manifests, right? So they're not actually even using their utility well. They have a triple initiator composition, and they're not using their utility well. So for example, in this case, Nuzera realizes that there's going to be a player over there, right? It's Ukor. He's got a headhunter. And there is no utility used whatsoever to try and get into C. I mean, no flash, no fault line, no, no nothing, no Scream throwing I don't even know how Scream would even throw a fucking 0 point to try and take his headhunter away or whatever. But frankly, I think the focus is on Nuzera here. That Nuzera just decides to swing, dies, Scream swings as well. Their idea there, I guess, being we'll double face the chamber that's inside his trademark. How is that a good idea? It doesn't make sense. So now Karmine Corp, once they get into sight here, so they finally end up taking out Ukor, as Scream just tucks and waits for the rest of his reinforcements to come through. They do use a paranoia as well, so okay. They eventually deal with Ukor. They go 1-for-1, though, against a player that only had a headhunter, but alright. So now, Karmine Corp don't have any utility to push back sight. So they don't have their breach. They don't have a flash. They don't have paranoia anymore. They don't have flashes here. They don't have shit. So how are they going to push back sight? So XMS is caged. And the cage is really good for his opponents here, but once it goes down, they're going to be able to push into backside. Scream decides to nade here. And Nivera tries to get through this smoke. Right? So this is a classic defensive smoke that gets put down. Nivera swings through on his own without anyone else pushing into backside, without any utility. He dies. Ayoung turns around expecting the second player, because all the time, if you're going to clear out a player in backplat without any utility, or even with utility, to be honest, you push one through the smoke and you push one through logs, and then they both double face or trade for each other, and they're going to be able to clean that up. But Scream has just fucking mollied here, so now when XMS swings through, he dies to Scream's molly. Scream's the IGL, guys. What's going through Scream's head here? Does Scream not want to take backside control? Does Scream think that it's fine to only have front sight and allow the player on defense to play inside that defensive smoke? What? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's fundamentally poor utility usage, poor teamwork, poor game plan. All of it doesn't make sense. So let's take a look at this one as well. So we've seen that they have poor utility usage when it comes to, you know, retakes with the triple initiator, scaling with the triple initiator. Now we're going to take a look at them defaulting with the triple initiator comp as well. And surely this can't be bad, right? They have so much util to default with. So they're going to put a cage down here. They're going to put a trip here. They're going to knife towards here to stop people going early garage. They trip here. They smoke here to cut off info. They cam to look towards B. All of this looks really solid and like it would be quite difficult to get through if you're going for any kind of early round defensive aggression from FPX. So they hold this for the first 20 seconds. And it seems like Scream's IGLing style as well is very, very slow at the beginning of rounds to punish early round aggression from the defenders and then to group up and do site execs. Now, part of the reason why this doesn't work is because their site execs are dog shit because they don't have the coordination or haven't put time in develop plan or whatever the fuck, I don't know. But also, I just want to show you that when they transition from their default, like from just being static and holding space, once they transition into taking even a modicum of space, it all falls to pieces for Karmine Corp. And it did on Pearl where they looked actually towards their best, and it did here when they were playing their poopy triple initiator comp as well. So they've used both smokes too. That's another thing to really point out here, right? Nevera doesn't have either of his smokes left because they've used them all. I don't know exactly where they both went. I think they might have both gone top C, but I can't recall at this point. But they still have cages A, so they can use the cage and they can get down short or they can flash through it with Scream and take some A control, right? But they actually decide to pop the cage about... When is it? Wait, was it... Oops, I missed it. Okay, so if you take a look at the cage right now, it's kind of difficult to see. But here, they pop the cage. You can hear it a little bit, or you can just trust me that it goes slightly darker on the minimap. But they have a cage here, and the cage has just been popped. At 1:16, the cage is popped, right? So at this point, with the cage popped, you now need to threaten... If you're not going towards A, you need to push people off this kind of angle that Nishao is on. Or TCH, sorry, that's his name. So you need to push people like TCH away and maybe threaten like you could be coming through it towards A long. And you want to be creating some kind of pressure because once this cage goes down, if you then create the pressure, someone could be watching this angle and, you know, you're not going to... they're going to know that it's fake. So they pop the haunt. The cage is up. The cage has been up for 2 seconds, 3 seconds. They throw a haunt now. Okay, the cage has been up for about half its duration, but they throw the haunt, right? They could be taking some A-long control here. They prowler. And at this point, the cage is down, by the way. The cage is down, and they're deciding to follow it into A. Look, here's Scream, here's Shin, and they're going to try and follow this utility in. They are fucking 5 seconds late. 7 seconds late on following their utility into these areas of the map. I mean, you're watching this from the minimap thinking, yeah, this is a fake to push these people away. But no, they're actually trying to follow this utility. But because the cage has now gone, and because they don't have the smokes available from Nevera, although one's now come back up online, they're going to have to jump peek, jiggle peek, and now try and take this position. TCH is getting back onto the angle. They're slow. Like, the scaling is so poor. They've just spent 20 seconds making sure there was no defensive aggression, and they've spent another 20 seconds going from here to here. They're like snails. They are like snails. They're unable to effectively scale off their utility whatsoever. So let's take a look at this one as well, just quickly. This is a retake in the pistol round where you see Karmine Corp are going to... So Scream backs up into this corner here, and he's going to throw a high KO flash for himself to try and retake for himself, right? So this is him throwing his own flashes to try and retake here. And you've got Flash, you've got Haunt, you've got Paranoia, you've got more flashes, you've got Fault Line. You've actually got some really good utility here to play some kind of flood retake as the spike goes down. The read is fairly good. You've got all your players in position. So this should be pretty decent. All right, so let's take a look at what they do. So first of all, they throw a smoke here. Nevera throws a smoke that the attackers can play inside of. So that doesn't seem very good to me. All of these attackers that are coming from short can walk into this smoke and come out of it in many different directions, can play out of LOS of the Haunt and out of LOS of Scream's flash that he just threw. So Nivera's just given them a safe spot to play inside against your own retake utility. So that seems pretty fucking troll to me. Then we get Nuzera so Scream's thrown his flash, but he threw his flash thinking that he would then be able to peek on this angle, right? And I can only assume that this smoke is... I don't even know what this smoke is supposed to be. It makes more sense if the smoke was actually flush and short. I don't get it. But he's thrown this flash so that he can peek on this angle. When his flash fails and he ends up inside... Or not the flash failing, but when he ends up inside this smoke from TZH, they need another flash from Nuzera. But he doesn't throw another flash at all. They don't use a Prowler because Shin has bought Sheriff on the pistol round instead of using a Prowler, like one of the best abilities in the game on pistol, and Shin's got a Sheriff instead, so they have no Prowler to help them get through the choke point. And instead, Berlin is able to play around the smoke that Nivera threw, dodge the Haunt, dodge the flash, and get 2 kills on players that are pushing without any fault line, any breach flash, or any Prowler being used. This is dog. This is dog. Really, really poor decision making by Karmine Corp. On top of this opting into Scream's games plan, his game style of Valorant, is also putting people in very uncomfortable agents. So XMS was popping off on Chamber recently in the, I think it was the French VRLs. And then he was like the best player in that region for his Chamber gameplay. And he's previously played a lot of smokes in the past. I thought he would go back to playing smokes and Nivera would end up playing Sentinel like he's done before. Look, at lock-in, XMS played 4 games of Cypher and 1 game of Killjoy. All time, XMS has played 4 games of Cypher, 2 games of Killjoy. So, XMS has played Sentinel before, 30 games of Chamber, but he has played 1 game of Killjoy coming into this. 1 game of Killjoy. And you could tell immediately that XMS had not even looked at basic guides on how to play Cypher. Look at this. XMS puts a trap up. What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? I'd be so pissed if I was Shin. Dude, if you're gonna opt into playing Scream's comps, learn your fucking agents, please. My dude also put down a terrible trip in split mid that Tui's jumped over, but it didn't actually impact the round, so I didn't pull it for evidence here. But here's another one. Here's another bad trip that XMS placed on the defense side.
Rotating back around. It was all a bait play out from Loud, and now they've been spotted. They're going to go back down again.
What is this, man? What is this? Come on, dude. Come on, man. But this isn't just XMS being bad at Cypher. Why is XMS playing Cypher in this tournament when he clearly doesn't know what he's doing? Well, what's going on? By the way, Scream somehow manages it to get this kill on less, and people were talking about, like, oh, he must have heard the footstep. Was it a bait? Like, oh, it's so Giga Brain, like, jumping over the trip, and Scream hears the footstep, so he knows, and he comes back and kills him. Mate, you cannot... I don't know if you've ever played Valorant before, but you can't hear shit from that distance, especially not on stage. But Scream does decide to go and re-explore B Heaven and does kill less, and this disaster ends up getting averted. But this was another example of a very bad setup. He also ran the same defensive setup on Split with his Cypher almost every time, even when Loud knew exactly where all the pieces of Cypher utility were. He never played around his cages. I'm talking about XMS here, obviously. Never played around his cages. And he also didn't seem to understand what he was doing on these flank maneuvers. So here's round 16. The Karmine Corp guys have got into a post-plant situation, and XMS is coming behind on the lurk. And XMS, I don't know whether he thinks that walking is running and running is walking, because I talked about this previously, but I suppose this, yeah, anyway. I talked about this previously when XMS was just shift walking up Haven Long. But here he is. This happened twice, by the way. Once through sewers and once through spawn, but I'm showing you the spawn example. He's through spawn. There's players, they know that there is a potential for players to be in all of this area from Loud, right? They could be in any of this spot for Loud. In fact, they could be all the way down here. So XMS should know, if he's got any idea of what's going on, that he's got to be quiet as he comes around on the flank here. So let's take a look at what XMS does.
His timing could be everything for security.
He's running. Cowanzi knows that he's here. He places a trip. Cowanzi knows he's here. He's running. He places a cage, I think. Didn't he place a cage there? No, he picked up his trap. So he places the trap. He picks up the trap. He places the trap again. He's running around. He swings. He dies. Brother, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's unbelievable. Now, Karmine Corp actually did have some good comp ideas, I think, on some maps. One map, actually. I liked their Lotus comp. I don't know whether their Lotus comp is going to end up being meta, but I thought that the ideas they had for it worked quite nicely. I thought that their pieces seemed like they were put in decent positions. I don't actually think that their Lotus comp is going to be meta, because I don't think they got enough value out of the way that they were playing the Sky and the Sova together. But I do think that they were onto something there, and that they had some idea of how the comp was going to play. So I thought that actually looked pretty good.